the documentary is about the life and thought of René Girard, who is a French thinker who spent most of his time in the United States developing a novel theory known as mimetic theory. And what got me started was kind of, I think it's a long, deep history, so I won't totally give the whole story, but when people encounter Girard, they can like look back at their own past and kind of see it in a fresh, new way. And so I had grown up in the Midwest outside of Chicago. I was making films since I was a little kid with my best friend down the street. But then I had this religious conversion. I was raised Catholic, but it never really was my own. So it was always there in the background, probably very deep within me. But it wasn't until my junior year of high school where I had like an experience at Mass and simultaneously felt the call to join the priesthood. And it was like surprising to me. That's why it was kind of like a conversion moment in a sense, because my life really did take a 180, where I was already looking at art school in Chicago. I was accepted there and turned it down to to join the seminary. By the end of 3 years there, I just couldn't do it anymore. One of my best friends was killed in a car crash. She wasn't a Christian. I remember hearing the news at like 2 a.m. and going down to the chapel and asking God to save her. And it felt very wrong to ask God to save this person based on my beliefs, like the rational belief that there was a danger for her to be saved or not. And then my deep understanding that I love this person, that she taught me about love. She was a very, very unique person. And so that's where my kind of interest in the question of hell and the question of like what's the relationship between belief and hell, and that's, I guess, where like this seed of doubt started entering into my spiritual seeking. And I left kind of like as an atheist. I gave myself permission to be an atheist, to not believe, and then see where that led me. And it was really freeing to kind of just like really question and to kind of basically be going from this kind of this corner of society that is kind of a bubble, to just the regular person who is unbelieving or kind of in a more nihilistic state that we all kind of like breathe nowadays. So I felt normal again for being as an unbeliever. And but at the same time, because the religious calling was very deep and just the search for truth, I needed to go do some more soul searching. I bought a one-way ticket to Europe. One of my best friends went to Rome, so I was living in Rome and just reading a bunch of books that I wasn't supposed to when I was in seminary, like Nietzsche. I was reading William James, Alistair McIntyre, and then I found Simone Weil and René Girard at that time. Girard, for me, he was speaking about Christianity in a way that I needed to hear, because it was a modern kind of like vocabulary. He was interested in not using theological terms, or I think he saw himself more as a scientist. And so that was very eye-opening to me. So what drew me most to Girard's thought at the time was this answer about atonement, and looking for a Christianity that made more sense to me than kind of these violent theories. He presents not a theological vision of God, but an anthropological vision of man that is responsible for the violence and not God. Oh yeah, so after this European trip that I went on and was kind of deconstructing my faith, I ended up going and finishing a degree in philosophy at Illinois State University. And I kind of kept getting more interested in Girard. And because I wasn't going the priesthood route anymore, I started dating a girl. So I was looking what careers do I want to do, and because of my love of film, since I was a young kid, I wanted to pursue that as well. So I was going more heavily making films and stuff like that. And kind of my first doc that I wanted to do was to interview René Girard. And I didn't know at the time that he was sick at this time. And this is probably like 2012, 2013. He passes away in 2015. And I kind of just like regretted, oh, I should have interviewed him. And I was like reading all these obituaries of him, and I was trying to find more content on him, and there wasn't a lot at the time. This is almost 8 years ago. So I there was this nice CBC interview, this 5 hour interview, but obviously he's not on camera for that. And then there was just like drips on the internet, and YouTube was, it wasn't very robust as it is now. So immediately after, I kind of started reaching out to people, and by the following year, I had booked a bunch of interviews, and I got married that year as well. So I bought a Sprinter van, and I just went cross country. And the more I kind of interviewed people, the more other people were saying yes to being interviewed. And because he had just passed within the year, a lot of interest was on Girard, and people were wanting to speak about Girard. But during COVID, I needed some financial help, so I started to work at the time it was called the Raven Foundation, which was a bunch of Girardians in Chicago, and they were interested in Girard and interested in the documentary, and Keith and Suzanne became the executive producers. 2 years there, I still needed more funding, and then I reached out to the Imitatio, which is the Thiel Foundation, Peter Thiel initiative to promote Girard. And I started working with my co-producer Trevor Merrill there, and for the next 4 years, very close-knit collaboration with him to create the documentary. As a filmmaker, I knew that I wanted to present the same kind of excitement that I had when reading Girard, and the same type of insights that I got over time. So I think Girard is like, the more you stay with him, the deeper the insights go. Like I'm not a scholar or anything, but I'll read Girard and it points me to something else, or points me to something deeper in myself, even today. And it's still kind of like shocking or jaw-dropping, like how prescient it is in one's life, how deep it goes. So I obviously just wanted to share that, because I also think he always stood out to me as like a John the Baptist figure, pointing to Christ, where he doesn't draw attention to himself, but he points to Christ. So I also wanted the documentary to do that it in some ways it's this modest portrayal of a man who points to Christ. So like as an icon painter can paint, it's not looking at the thing, it's looking beyond it. And I think Girard always does that. And so even Girard talks about like that imitation is a chain of imitations, is a chain of being, and the transcendent imitation, or the imitation of Christ, is a series of models. It's the whole church. It's looking at one another as other Christ, as long as we're pointing to Christ and not being in rivalry with each other. So deep theological insights there, like I said, it's free on YouTube. So it's finally in a medium that is the most contagious. It's easily shared. I remember being in college and reading Girard and picturing these scenes in my head, like in a way, when you're reading about like harmonization, like really the only cinematic presentation is Stanley Kubrick's 2001, and so I wanted to kind of partly do an homage to that, because it's kind of just like culturally relevant. Violence in the Sacred, where Girard talks about this. He doesn't talk about harmonization in there, but he does. It is about the scapegoat mechanism, and that actually comes out after Kubrick, 2001. So like it's just in the air at the time, like this understanding of violence in the early 70s, late 60s, and so in order to achieve the harmonization scene, we shot on a virtual production, which is like they shot on like the Mandalorian. And so we shot in Chicago, and basically it also an homage to Kubrick because he's doing front screen projection. This is back screen, projection, but the technique is there. And we had to do it cheap, so I had to buy some monkey suits, and I found one on eBay and I bought it, but it was for a child, so I had to cast my nephew to play this ape. But it was so realistic, and it turned out good. But we had to do a lot of split screening. We did a lot of motion control shots because if you're moving the camera at the same time that you're duplicating the actors, we only had two suits, so we wanted to have a group of monkeys or apes or hominids. So we had to motion control it, and with the technology of virtual production, basically the LED screen moves with your camera. So yeah, we just kind of like wanted to put it out there to show that the cinematic version of the scapegoat mechanism. So yeah, I think it turned out pretty good. I think Girard's ideas they're simple at first, and they're very striking at first. And you can take them in, and it's this kind of like this long-term effect that he can have on your life. So what I wanted the doc to be is like, I didn't want it to be the end of the story, that someone can just watch the doc and be done with it. I wanted it to feel like, oh, they have to go deeper, and then just invite people to do that. Like, I guess it doesn't mean reading Girard, for the next 10 years or whatever, but just an openness to these insights, and yeah, I'm also excited about how people respond to the documentary, and really looking forward to kind of the surprises to come of the effect in which it's actually affecting people. So I would also say, like, if the doc does affect you, reach out or comment in the YouTube channel. I like seeing those, and knowing that it's reaching people. So